I'll get kick started with the intro. So yeah, welcome to everyone back. For those who are regular attendees and those who are new to the meetup, they run on a monthly basis. They vary from panel events such as we've got today, individual speakers, lightning talks, which we have done before, and basically anything and everything DevOps and cloud native. The meetup group itself on Meetup is, I think, just shy of 1,100 people now. So yeah, it's great to see so much support for, I guess, what traditionally was obviously based in Bristol and now more so remote to the group. So for those who have come via LinkedIn, I'll put all the socials in the follow-up after. So those who have come via LinkedIn, feel free to join the Meetup page. We obviously post regular, monthly meetups in there, and obviously kind of new stuff as and when it comes up as well. So it's worth signing up. But yeah, I'll pop all of those in the kind of follow up. Today is clearly obviously a panel event. So we've got 4 great speakers. We're joined by Tina, Nick, Adam, and Jim, who will basically be, Tina will be guiding us through and steering the conversation through DevOps culture, which is a broad topic to say the least. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it goes. We've got some hopefully some controversial things, spark a bit of debate, discussion, and hopefully some questions at the end as well. So yeah, Tina, I will hand over yourself, give you the floor, do a bit of intro into yourself, and then yeah, I guess we'll get kick-started from there.
Thanks, Steve. So I'm Tina Howell. I am the exec for cloud engineering and digital. So basically, we build all the lovely platforms in the cloud, whether it's AWS, Azure, or GCP. And basically, I've been doing cloud for now about 12 years. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce the rest of the speakers. So first off is Adam. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, yes, I'm Adam Coles. I'm head of DevOps and cloud engineering for Opencast Software, where we... Yep, can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah. For Opencast Software, we are a software consultancy based in the northeast of England. I've been in the industry about 20 years, in this role about a year and a half. So a lot of software delivery before that, and then much more heavily into cloud and DevOps.
Okay, so that's Jim. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yep, hi, I'm Jim Lamb. I'm the head of engineering at Airwalk Reply. We're all about digital transformation, helping get people into AWS, Azure, GCP. Myself, I come from more of a sysadmin ops background. A long time ago, I was a C programmer, but we don't talk about that anymore because I wasn't very good. So I come through that ops to DevOps kind of journey, and now we're applying that and the team to cloud exclusively.
Thank you. And Nick, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Nick Whitaker. I work for Nationwide Building Society, which is a mutually held building society formed in 1884. So if you want to talk about tech debt, we've got about 138 years of it. We've got 60 million members. We're repeatedly kind of voted most trusted financial brand, Bank of the Year, that kind of thing. Quite a big enterprise then, with that breadth and depth of history. About 3,000 sort of in-house engineering tech staff, about 9,000 change and run staff in total. So that's kind of the scope of activity that might be pertinent to DevOps. I'm a senior enablement specialist, which is a mouthful. It means I'm accountable for improving flow of work through the organisation, help teams focus on visualisation, measurement, resolving impediments to flow, through experimentation and hypothesis, and helping leaders to educate and upskill and get people to a mindset of continuous learning and improvement through that experimentation. My previous gig, prior to being at MBS a year ago, was as head of platform engineering and DevOps at Virgin Atlantic. So a very different kind of organisation, but implementing it from the ground up there as well. Thank
you very much, Nick. So I had an interesting conversation this week with a different organisation, and what we've noticed is like this year there's been like a revival in DevOps. So I'd be really, really interested to understand what is actual DevOps to you? What's your definition of DevOps? Who'd like to go first? Right, I'm going to choose one of you. Come on, Jim. You've got to put
no
that
problem.
out there.
For sure. So DevOps certainly isn't, let's use Jenkins. DevOps is it's a methodology, but it's people, it's processes, and it's tools. It's about having the right people that are incentivized the right way towards common goals. It's about the process to get your code, your features, your bug fixes, whatever, through and out into production as quickly as possible, but as correctly as possible with the highest possible quality. And it's using the right tooling to enable that. Tooling is just the enabler. Yes, we're considering the whole technology from application development through to traditional ops, breaking down the silos, putting common goals so that people work in the same direction to get things done quickly and with high quality.
Would Adam or Nick like to add to that? So,
well, in anticipation of the question, I kind of did a bit of a Google trawl because I'm always interested in the definitions, and this question always gets asked, right, in these kind of events. And Wikipedia, DevOps is a set of practices. Microsoft Azure, DevOps is a culture fostering collaboration among all the roles involved in development and maintenance of software. All right. I've worked with consultancies who kind of taken a software development lifecycle view. Dora, say SRE, DevOps are philosophies. I really liked Patrick Dubois' definition in the Puppet State of DevOps 2021. He says, DevOps is not automation and it's not the cloud. I think Jim's right. I think those things are conveyor belts, to help. But he says it's whatever you do to bridge the friction created by silos, and all the rest is engineering. So I think that's much more like it. It's really about breaking down barriers between teams so you can develop products and teams responsible for operating and owning those things and get to value outcomes.
Yeah. I mean, I guess from my point of view, it's similar to like the agile methodologies, and what you're really trying to do is deliver working, shippable value software to the end users. So anything that removes those silos. I mean, traditionally, I ask this question a lot when I interview, like, what is DevOps? And I sometimes get, it's dev and it's ops and they're working closely together. And it's like, that's yes, that's part of it. That's sort of the seed of how this developed. But really, those silos exist across the business. If you just have dev and ops work together more closely, you'll eliminate some of that friction. But you need to bring in, your compliance, your sign-offs. You remove all of your, as much as possible of your gatekeeping, and replace that with automation while creating that high trust environment, basically, that lets you ship software without impediment. So
it's interesting that John, who's on chat, he says Microsoft threw the hand grenade in by mixing their product Azure DevOps. But what's quite interesting is there is actually people out there that say that DevOps is a pipeline. Would you kind of agree with that? Or would you say that realistically it is tools, processes, and people? Or actually does Azure DevOps, a tool like that, give you that purpose?
I think the Azure DevOps thing is interesting. And I think, John, it's, you're right, it's a hand grenade. It's a good point. Look, DevOps is not, to the point that the others have made, DevOps is not about the tooling. Yeah, tooling might facilitate some stuff, and it's not just your dev and your ops together. That's a subset of it. It's true, but that's like supposing that training a particular team to be high performing agile is gonna solve your organizational problems. It won't. You might have a locally optimized team delivering loads of stuff super well, but they're gonna hit the buffers at either end of their particular subunit, where they're then trying to interact with the risk and the control focus on the people that Adam mentioned, and then sort of upstream from there, you've got the people who are ideating and designing and so on, and you've got those friction points. So DevOps for me, at the philosophical level, is much more about the end-to-end view of your system of work. I think the thing that Microsoft Azure have smartly latched onto in as they've grabbed onto that label is what is rich in that particular tool set is not the pipeline bit. The pipeline bit is useful in a context if you can do some automation with it, and that automation solves some real bottleneck problems for you, and is not just automating for the sake of automation. Was it worth doing that in the first place? But what you do get in the Azure and the O365 suite, and by the way, I'm not a Microsoft salesperson, we're not using that particularly in MBS. I have used it in a different Virgin Atlantic. But what you do get in that tool set is you can have your wikis in one place, and your Kanbans in one place, and your test cases in one place, and you can have Power BI on the top, and you can get all your metrics up in one reporting tool. So what they have smartly latched onto is if you configure it in the right way and everybody's joined up through their behaviors and their mindset and all the other existential stuff you need for DevOps, and the tooling that Microsoft provide you through Azure DevOps allows you to drill down, up and down through the stack and see it all in one place. And that's quite close to what you're trying to achieve with DevOps, even though they've sneakily appropriated it, to sell a tool. And it's not about the tool, of course.
No. Thanks, Nick, for that. Really appreciate it. So I think what's quite interesting, it leads us on to realistically, the use of processes. You've got like Dennis, who said that CI/CD is not the only workflow that's right for automation, but actually realistically, when you really look at DevOps, you can see that actually, if you look at the overall business processes and actually developing people, how do we incorporate that? How do we actually get people to change their mindset? How do we get the business processes to change, to include DevOps, that DevOps, not mindset, but I would say the automation of the processes to make releases faster?
I mean, from my point of view, I think you should be able to demonstrate that to businesses quite easily, because if you look at the high performing businesses, like every company in the world is a software company, is in our say a technology company. So if you're not adopting this, you're very probably not releasing quickly. You're not catching up with your competitors. You're not able to fix problems. You're getting reputational damage through poor quality releases, or releases that have to be rolled back of your major products. And so you should be able to start from that point of view and say, how do you address that? Well, you need to bring in processes that will let you release more quickly, update more quickly, roll back more quickly. And if you're going to be able to do that and not have it fall over, and not have to call out every member of your department at night to fix problems manually, you need to start implementing these sort of processes, the pipelines, yes, the automation, the monitoring, the SRE techniques, the ability to scale up, and all of these things, which are really part of this whole area. So,
Jim,
yeah,
do you think that you need to modify, because Adam is really right. So there's a lot of processes that need to be changed, but do you think actually your change control processes need changing as well?
Yes, though not to make them any less stringent. Obviously, the change control processes, you've just got to make them more automatable, or at least faster. I mean, the idea of a weekly CAB meeting where everyone sits around for 2 hours and reviews printed copies of changes is surely in the past. You need to have as much automated testing as possible, and gain confidence in that testing, so that those people who will still be there to approve changes can have confidence in it, and you can prove that it's passed those tests and so on. And if you do have manual inspection of any changes, or there'll always be scheduling questions, and if you've got large organizations with multiple things going on at once, you're always going to need to make sure that two completely different systems that may be related in some way aren't being affected at the same time, those kind of things, of course. But you want to make that as smooth as possible, and then feed that back into your automation. So maybe again, we're talking a lot about CI/CD pipelines, but your pipeline might call out to a tool, your ServiceNow or what you're using, and once a change is approved, bang, that pipeline can continue with whatever scheduling caveats you put around it. I mean, back to the earlier point about how you get people to change their mindsets by demonstration. Absolutely, I agree with Adam. Though often, as we approach organizations, as a consultancy, we approach organizations we're not currently working with. You need somebody who will let you, who believes in it, who thinks maybe a POC, and you start to prove that that this thing can deliver value, even in just a very tiny part of the organization or tiny process that you can improve, and then you can point to that and use that as the kind of shining example of how things can be sped up. And once people start to see this stuff working, they'll get interested. Even people who have slightly more old school siloed mindsets will start to either believe in it because they'll see the speed that it's moving at, or maybe they'll just get involved because they don't want to be left behind.
Jim, I think sorry, go on, Tina.
Would you like to add to that, Nick? I think.
Well, I was just gonna pick up on the very sensible stuff Jim was saying. I think the social proof thing is hugely important, and that's what's going to help people move across a change curve and begin to adopt. I think in order to demonstrate the social proof, you have to be targeting the right changes. That means you need to be measuring the things that matter. And back to the point about the tooling and the automation that was in the question, I think tooling and automation can help you from two ends. That there's either the bits of the tooling, I think Adam mentioned SRE, for example, that's giving you metrics, information, feedback. There's the SRE type things about the stability and the resilience and the uptime of your system, and I think those are probably close to some of the more SDLC view of DevOps. Mean time to recovery and change failure rate and all that kind of stuff. But there's also the things you can measure through, be it through Jira or be it through Azure DevOps, and Power BI and dashboarding, all that kind of stuff. The things that tell you where you are from a process efficiency perspective. So your throughput, your work in progress. Have you got too much work in progress? Is that what's hampering you getting stuff out with regularity in good consumable bite-sized chunks all the way into production in a consumable way? Where we've got blockers, what's the mean time to a thing being unblocked in your system of work? So I think you can use tooling at either end to either shine a light on the impediments around which you can then form some kind of experiment hypothesis and unblock it, and then automate it and then improve the system. And that gives you the social proof that Jim talks about, or at the other end, thinking about some of the stuff that Adam was talking about, you've got these systems that are showing you, where you are in your system, and how many times you've had P1 incidents and all that kind of stuff, and that gives you the other end of the tunnel, the means to then go and act and show leaders in the organisation these are the things we need to fix, ameliorate, and focus on, rather than kind of an assumed if we pull a lever and implement safe or implement do the DevOps, that's what's going to give us value. It's not. It's in context. It's focused. Sometimes there's no point in automating a thing. It's just not worth it. You've got a stable system. It's optimal for what you need. Go and spend your time elsewhere. You don't need to automate nuts to soup everything.
Nope. Good point there. So Alex has got a really great question. So I get this quite a lot when I talk to my clients. Goes, do you think DevOps, Agile, and CI/CD overlap? And my response to that, and I think it would be great if get your responses, is that all of those go together to enable DevOps as a whole. And I would be really interested to see where you've seen that being successful. See, I'm putting it onto you guys, not onto me, so that basically we can see what was the successes of some of the work that you've done and some of the failures that you've seen? Because I think it's really important that people understand that it has to be combined effort to be able to bring all of this together. It's not just one methodology. I think it would be good for people to hear about failures, because we all talk about successes, but we never really talk about the failures, do we? So I'm going to pick on somebody. I'm going to go to Adam first.
Yeah. So I mean, the original question, are they all? Yes, they all correspondingly overlap. I mean, the CD bit, the continuous delivery, that's really DevOps from a different approach, and it's similar to the way that SRE came in, and it's still got that same emphasis on delivering software. I think in terms of what I've seen over the past 8 years, is that everybody tells me they're doing all of these things. Like every client I ever work with, every company we approach, they all say they're doing them, but they're not actually ending up with the result that I would therefore expect to get from that. We've got some clients who are very capably, who have a very mature platform. They're running agile as much as they can. It's difficult to run that scale once you get into the safe and all those sort of things. Some of the benefits tend to me to break down, but the teams are very empowered. So there is a high trust environment. The development teams are able to release themselves, push of a button into production. And they've done this based off very well established DevOps principles and automation in their platform. And that really is that's that client. I can't name them, but they're a government department that services millions of people in the country. And that's working really well. I've got other clients who have DevOps engineers, have DevOps teams, which is an anti-pattern in itself to me, another silo, but they are still only releasing every few months. And to me, that really that's not an optimal outcome of any of this. If you're not providing value, if you still got to go through really heavy checks and gates, then you've not really gained the benefit. You've probably just rebadged operations as DevOps and called it a day.
Jim, have you got anything to add to that? Because I think it's an interesting one. I suppose my question to add to that is that what is the true business at value? What is the true business value that clients get?
Well, they get to move faster. They get to be more agile with a small a. They get to deliver their features. They get to deliver their improvements to their customers quicker, and hopefully sell more widgets or whatever it is they do. Also, hopefully they reduce their level of errors. They increase their quality. They have fewer of these midnight call outs to their teams and fewer outages for their users. That's ultimately what we're all going for. We want to move faster and break less things. I mean, I absolutely believe, as Adam was saying, yes, you can't just put a DevOps team in between Dev and Ops. A friend of mine used to say, if you've got a team called DevOps, you're doing it wrong. And I absolutely believe in that too. And in terms of things going wrong, because you were fishing for some horror stories, I guess where I've seen it go badly wrong, and this is a difficult one in large organizations where you can't bring your ops and dev teams together because maybe you've outsourced them both. And one particular organization springs to mind where you've got an outsourced dev team and an outsourced ops team. Well, how are you ever going to bring together those two teams to have common goals, to be incentivized and to be working towards the common goals when clearly they're paid by different people and have different definitions of success and how well they're doing in their jobs? You're never going to bring those two things together. So people are always going to be fighting. They're always going to be in their silos because the organization has placed them there.
It's a really good point. So like Nick, you are, you don't work for consultancy, you work for Nationwide. I suppose I take it Nationwide's going through a transition. Have you had any like failures that you can talk about, or like there's some successes that Nationwide have had, so that basically we can see it from a client perspective and not just from a consultancy perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just Nationwide. I can pick success and failure from previous organisations as well. I think in relation to the question around is agile a distinct thing to DevOps to CI/CD, or are they all part of the same spectrum or continuum? They're absolutely part of the same spectrum or continuum. And if I think about an initiative I was involved in one organisation, we had a high-performing a small group of teams, so it's about 3 pods, creating APIs that was basically external, making externally available some of our well-wrapped product for consumption into other systems, and those teams, had a pretty high release frequency in terms of being able to get to production. But the goalposts kept moving, and the APIs were never fit for purpose, because the industry standard of what the payloads were that need to be delivered was highly mutable, was itself emerging, and was changing over time. And so the idea of making the team itself highly DevOps and highly agile didn't solve the problem. What solved the problem was picking up and looking at the system as a whole and thinking about the requirements that were being generated by industry standard bodies, and actually working to get our presence, our technical presence, and our product ownership presence onto that industry board. And it wasn't until we were able to do that we were able to get a foot in the door and be able to preempt and get early warning of some of the changes to the payload design, and be able to have a voice at that table, and set expectation in terms of the industry standard, but also be able to get in front of it, and deliver the right stuff through our system of work. So it wasn't just delivering stuff faster, it was delivering the right thing at the right point in time, and just enough of that right thing to make the product consumable. And I think that's the key point. So I think, to answer the original question, they're absolutely all one and the same. You can optimize within teams, and that's your agile bit. You can look at the friction between teams and within a team system of work, and that might be your lean bit. And then for me, the DevOps, back to the original question about what is DevOps. Well, DevOps for me really is the mindset that says, look at, bring dev and ops and sec and your business design people, and the customer and everybody else together at the right point in time, to have the right conversations at the right point in time, to ensure you really are focused on the value outcome for the customer, so you're delivering the right thing, and that then answers your value question that I think you asked. So we see that we have that challenge in Nationwide. We had that challenge at Virgin Atlantic when I was there. That's the real nature of the challenge, and so you have to pick a mix for your situation and your circumstance, and you are always going to emerge and evolve your plan of action. I think both Jim and Andy have talked about the anti pattern of. I'm sorry, Jim and Adam talked about the anti pattern of having a DevOps engineering team, but it's not an anti-pattern to have a DevOps enabling team. And maybe you have an enabling team until you've got some of your teams skilled up enough to be able to assimilate some of the the knowledge and the techniques and the mindset and the behaviors, and then that team disperses and those teams move forward. So I'm sorry, that was a long answer to your question.
It's all good. It's all good. So it's quite interesting. So Dave Connell has said, basically, when you talk about tooling, you're kind of like, is tooling DevOps? Well, tooling is part of DevOps, but it doesn't actually enable the end-to-end. And I think tooling is important, but it's less important than changing the processes. But what I'm really interested in is, people have started to talk about no-ops. No-ops is the thing where basically you can manage your platform without actually having people, and you've got all the tooling managing it. Do you think that is immature right now, or do you think that is something that's going to happen is already happening, or something that's going to happen in the future? I'm going to go to Adam first. I'm going to pick on Adam.
Sure. Okay. I mean, I think generally people, if people say that they're working in no ops right now, they're probably not telling the truth. I think it's more of an aspirational model. And really, the other part is that sometimes I think we all go through in this industry of various thing of, is my job gonna stop being a job in 5 years' time? Am I going to be automated out of this? I don't see it as that. I think, you know, there's a continuum between where we are now and that model where more and more and more is automated. I suspect that the cloud providers, the big industry behemoths like Microsoft, again, are going to try and get into this more. So more of this is automated, and some of the way the platforms are going, use of Kubernetes and management there is leading to less requirement for sort of manual intervention. But I think it's just going to change the skill set slightly of the people who are now, say, I hesitate to say DevOps engineers, but the people working with these tool sets. It's just changing things slightly. I don't think that's going to go away. It's just going to, as usual, like all of these things, the more of these things that are automated for them, the more they're freed up to concentrate on the things that really matter. Which I think, if you ask any of the DevOps practitioners here on this call, they probably say, I'm up to here, you know. So anything that frees them up to work more on the actual real benefits is advantageous.
So Jim, so no ops, but I know that somebody has talked about DevSecOps, and there's obviously, you know, is DevOps getting too complicated? Is my question, just to put it out there a little bit.
Yeah, if I could just talk a little bit about no ops, though, I see no ops as just an edge case of DevOps. If you take what was dev and what was ops and you're pushing them so far together, your Venn diagram becomes a circle. You know, it's you build it, you run it. It's no ops. It's still DevOps practices. You managed to take those two you managed to take the common goals to the point that the goals and the tools used are all being done by one person sat in one seat, and or a group of people all doing the same thing, and that's great. I don't see it as a threat to DevOps. I don't see it as I just see it as a special case. But like we've said, it's quite a theoretical special case right now, because they're always out of band things that happens. What happens when there's a 0-day vulnerability found, or something that's out of band with your development and release cycle? What happens when Amazon has an outage in a region and you're suddenly redeploying in a different region? Your pipelines won't take care of that. As for DevSecOps, yeah, so now we're building in other things in the same way that, you know, Agile was built for software development, and then new technologies have allowed us to define infrastructure and networking as software. You know, if we hadn't had virtualization and cloud, it'd been pretty difficult to automate hardware provision. And now lots of great security tooling to allow us to bring security into our processes, and you know, we talk about shifting left and putting as much security testing and consideration for security as earlier in the pipelines to allow us to feedback quicker and fail faster, so that we can go around again without having to get, you know, a lot of companies used to and probably still do. You know, you build something amazing that let's say a week before you launch your amazing new product or website or system, let's do a pen test. And oh yeah, the report comes back the day before you launch and it's terrible, and we have to delay everything. So of course, building these things in, but also using DevOps processes around security type problems and security type functions. So that's another angle, which is which is about, again, automation and thinking about everything as code and as much automation as possible. But these are all good things.
So Nick, Tess has said, do you see things like DevSecOps distract and NoOps distract away from the wider adoption of DevOps and obviously like all the processes and tooling that goes with that?
I mean, at the risk of parroting what Jim has already said, you know, these are labels, really, and I think if you're doing DevSecOps, you're exhibiting the same mindset you exhibit for DevOps, which is you are shifting left and shifting right and having the right conversations, you know, and from a NoOps perspective, you're seeking to automate as much as you can, be that through, static scanning, be that because config files in place are already pre-baked through, I don't know, we were talking about Microsoft earlier, through ARM templates or whatever it is, or you might be using, Ansible to help deploy out your estate in a repeatable way, and therefore you've got your security baked in. So obviously over time you're looking to do those things. I think for me, is NoOps, where we are now and a real thing? Well, aspirationally it's a good thing, and I think it just describes the process. It just describes what I've just said, an aspiration to do some stuff. Are we in a big enterprise like Nationwide going to be at a point where we have 100% cloud and 100% automation, and we've been able to cleanly separate our apps from our infrastructure? Those are all very, very big asks. I'd suggest even for a one-trick pony organization, I think that's going to be incredibly difficult. It might well be possible at Nationwide for discrete products, assuming those products are well aligned to clean platforms that themselves are aligned to value streams, that know they're doing the right things in the right context for the customer. See my previous answer, where the core platforms themselves are truly PaaS. If all those things are lined up, maybe. Well, I think that's real enterprise level, and then, if you think about, on top of that, regulatory constraints, certainly in finance and banking where I am now, certainly in airline where I was previously. You think about data locale constraints. We can put this data in Northern Europe, but we can't put it in the US, for example. And then value proposition constraints. Do I want my special sauce, up hosted in Amazon or Google, really, and then practically, are you really going to port your Linux TPF mainframe, your flat file episodic high OI systems to cloud, where you've got millions of IO, transactions per second, and then you think about the costs of those, of doing that, and then you're thinking about hot or warm, function serverless stuff and the cost of that. Maybe if you've got Corey Quinn on your team doing your accounting for AWS, that's possible. I can't afford Corey Quinn, so aspirationally, yes. I think those are just labels for behavioural things we should be aspiring to do. Optimize, the right, horses for courses, given our particular problem at a point in time.
Thanks, Nick, on that, because we're getting close.
Can I just go back? I just go back on the second thing as well. I mean, I hate the proliferation of extra bits in the middle, because you could just start adding in everything. So I mean, in an industry like Nick's, you've got to have sec in DevOps, otherwise you can't do DevOps. Basically, exactly. You've got to have, yeah. So anything that blocks you from being able to achieve that DevOps culture has to be incorporated in there, because you just can't do it otherwise.
And you know what, Adam, I don't care what we call it, to be honest. There's so many debates around terminology in my organisation. We will that's the first thing we'll happily throw out. Whatever particular executive, whatever you want to call it, that's what we'll call it, as long as we're all talking about the same thing, right?
Probably take out the word DevOps. That's the first thing. Just get rid of that one itself.
Okay. So, because we've got a couple of minutes, and I do want to talk about the people element of DevOps, because I think it's important. We obviously got a digital skills gap in DevOps, and it's obvious, because rates and salaries have gone through the roof. So how do we get more people into DevOps? How do we do the training? Have you done anything that's different that assists people to actually be retrained into, whether it's cloud engineering, whether it's platform engineering, whether it's DevOps engineer, basically, is there things that you've done that, would make a real big difference to incorporating more people into the work that we do today? Who would like to go first? Shall I pick on Jim? I'm going to pick on Jim.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we've noticed this, of course, like everyone has. There's just not enough people, and those people that are out there seemingly ever more expensive. I mean, one of the things we've started only this year in January is we've decided to start our own graduate program at Airwalk, just because we feel we've now got enough people with enough talent and the ability to teach, So we're of a size where we can take on people with less experience, possibly no industry experience. Sure, these people might have been computer science graduates or some similar technical discipline, so they might understand academically and can probably code, but having them learn about the kind of stuff we do, it's interesting to know what isn't taught in universities these days. You know, CI/CD is kind of alien. Yes, they might have used source control, but on a group project, but not in in the way, you know, the way we would use it in a large project. So we feel that we're able to teach that stuff, and then, you know, given a short length of time, relatively speaking, get them onto projects and get them out there working. So that's our answer at the moment, is to start growing our own, as well as, of course, competing with everybody else for that limited resource.
It's really true, because I think a university that I went to, they're still using SVN and COBOL or Visual Basic. It's kind of like, whoa, that's like tech I used ages ago.
I'm quite impressed at the amount of Python and Git that's going on, but yeah, equally, that's not all university. Yeah.
So, Adam, do you think that there is an ability to get more people in, or is it that we're always going to use the same circle of people? Because I think the DevOps market is actually quite incestuous.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's you'd think there would be more people in the industry by now, considering how long we've been doing this. And if you know, I'd say, first thing I say to everybody out there is look at the salaries on offer. Maybe that's something you might be interested in, you know, and it's a growth, it's a massive growth industry. I mean, yeah, we're looking at cross training. You know, a lot of our internal people have come from a development background. DevOps isn't taught really as a course. It's certainly not. You know, people aren't coming into the industry fresh with those skills. Whereas if you with some of our other, you know, if you look at people coming out of computer science degrees, they tend to have like done some reasonably extensive programming, at least, maybe not in the enterprise way, which is something that we still have to teach everybody in and that's one thing. But you know, some countries are doing better than others, and also like they've adapted to the market. They're bringing in, you know, for a few years they've been bringing in very professional, you know, testers. So they're teaching that specifically as a skill, and you'd think that DevOps would start to approach that. What we tend to see in the market a lot is people who were in, you know, have had long careers in sysadmin or ops, and they've sort of, you know, things have changed around them and they've moved into this area. They, you know, and maybe they've been rebadged, etc. You know, and these people have got a hell of a lot to offer. I guess one of the things that I would probably want those people to learn is more about the things that we've talked about today, which is why we're doing this, why we're, you know, what the point of it is, that it isn't just, oh, now I can replace this Python script that I used to use to set up my servers with this infrastructure, you know, this Terraform module. It's like there is a step change in how we're expecting people to work. So that's where, can you teach that? I don't know. Can you, or is it something people have to sort of pick up for themselves?
That's very, very true. I think the growth, I don't know if you call it, but we call it the growth mindset. It's about the ability to adapt and change and pick up not only the processes and tooling and methodologies that help you work, but it's also continuously wanting to learn in your role. And I think you've got to have that kind of mindset if you're working in this type of role. So I'm going to ask a controversial question. Obviously we're getting close to time, so I'm going to pick on Nick. So Nick, is DevOps dead? And I know that's kind of like, why would you say that? It is because last year there was a lot of noise around, is DevOps dead? Does it provide any value? Do companies really benefit from it? And what I'd like to understand is, from your perception, are we going through a revival, or do we think DevOps is just something that just happens now?
Well, look, if you think that, you know, alleviating dependencies between teams and the stuff you're building. And if you think that a smooth flow of work enables focus and enjoyment of your work, and if you think that continuously improving your systems and paying off technical debt, and paying off debt in your system of work, and if you think that psychological safety, and you think that customer focus and getting value out to customer and optimization and doing the right things are no longer relevant, then yes, I guess DevOps is dead. I personally don't think those things are true, and I just don't think it's the right question. Honestly, I think a better question is how much DevOps, in quotes, is applicable to my context. It's the thing I've been banging on about for the past hour. If you think you're going to pull the DevOps lever, particularly in bigger organizations, and that's going to cause a sea change, and you're mistaken. And it's probably not worth the fiscal effort of even trying to do that. I think what is worth it, and you used the phrase, Tina, is over time, either bringing in or coaching up your existing people to get a growth mindset. And that is a journey, and that does take a lot of time. I'm going to rip a phrase off an esteemed industry peer of mine, which is, hire smart and kind people. Smart, and not as in book smart, but people who understand that if you're using AWS or Google Cloud or Azure or whatever, what you've got deployed today and the paths that you're consuming today ain't going to be the same tomorrow when Microsoft mandates an update across the whole system, and some features that you had access to as a developer last week ain't going to be there next week. You better be able to adapt, and you better be willing to adapt on that journey. Those are it's that kind of smartness and kind, as in people who understand that it's not just about what they're doing, it's about their sense of purpose up to the whole, and how they can relate their everyday work to the value that's been consumed by customer, and what that means in terms of the other people in their system of work. So working with those sec people, and the business design people, etc., having smart and kind people. And that's what DevOps, it really fundamentally is to me. And if you're going to be able to compete innovatively in a disrupted marketplace, and financial sector is absolutely one of those, Monzo's, Revolut, all those kind of, crypto, all that stuff, then certainly from a nationwide perspective, DevOps has never been more relevant. We have to be able to use it.
Thank you. So Jim or Adam, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just say, it might be it might be dead if everyone had actually done it properly for the past 5 years and had taken it as far as they could go. I mean, this industry is all about continuous improvement in every sense, and I think even people who are like in the top 10% of people in that state of DevOps report, the people who are doing all of the good things, they can always see ways that they can make this better. They could head towards that no ops point of view. They can start concentrating on different things. That as Jim said, like talking about shifting security left, shifting compliance left, be able to bring financials in. People are leveraging the cloud, and they've got very little ability to be able to forecast how much things are going to cost in this new world where everything is auto scaling and responding and dynamic, and you need to be able to bring that into your processes as well. So I think we're at the very early stages really of this, and it might not be called DevOps in 5 years time, in the same way as we might not be doing Scrum. Something else might come along, and we might say, oh, this is more pervasive. So those other things, you build it, you run it, operability, these other sort of competing sort of frameworks. But no, a long way from dead, and those skills for everybody else who's out there, you just need to build on them, make sure you continue to grow, as Tina said in the previous question.
Lovely. Yeah, Jim, I didn't know whether there's anything additional you wanted to add
pretty
to
much pretty much the same thing, but call it what you like. If you want to carry on delivering good product quickly, then you're going to need these principles and these aims and these goals. So yeah, put whatever label on it you want. The principles aren't dead.
Excellent, lovely. Yeah, I think kind of overall there's been really good discussion points. I know there's some stuff, some questions in the chat that we haven't touched upon. I'm conscious of, the hour. I think we could probably spend 2 hours plus. We could have multiple sessions like this. But I think, I think Alex did put something in a little bit earlier on. He said I think the speed and growth and adoption is a major factor because every person you bring into the industry, it seems like there's 2 positions employers are looking to fill. I guess, from a technical and people perspective, potentially. Yeah, I don't know whether, Jim, you've got any thoughts on that, or whether, I know that's going back a little bit from where we've kind of touched upon there, but.
Yeah, obviously it's difficult. The whole we talked about resourcing and so on, but we just got to keep trying. Yeah, I'm surprised. The point was raised earlier that more people haven't come into the industry given we've been doing it for so long. I remember that time 10-15 years ago when sysadmins all went to become gas fitters because the salaries were higher. So why is the same thing not happening in the opposite direction? I don't know. It's a problem itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a question a little bit earlier on, and Adam, I don't know what your, I guess, kind of brief thoughts on this are. Just I am conscious of the time. Junior popped in a little bit earlier on. What the opinions are on DevOps versus SRE?
Yeah, I mean, again, these are just things that are approaching the same problem from slightly different directions. I mean, Google brought in SRE. DevOps came from somewhere else, more out of operations, and really they're complementary things. I think a lot of companies that concentrate on the pre-prod side of things when it comes to DevOps. You've going back to what I said about delivering functional and quality software to people, you've got to make sure that those things are working well in production. You've got to be, bringing the chaos engineering or whatever you like, whatever Netflix is doing, to make sure like things are really, really robust. That's all part of the same tool set. If you're like working in DevOps, you should already be looking at some of this. You should already be looking at the observability and monitoring of your product in production. And really, it's just taking that bit to the next level. So yeah, I mean, it's never one versus the other. You probably should be doing both.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something that we've all, I think, kind of unanimously said, which is it doesn't matter almost what you call it. As you said, there, it's approaching almost the same thing from a different angle potentially. But yeah, I don't know whether, Nick, from your side of things, whether they're I guess for Virgin and more recently Nationwide, whether there is a little bit more of a differentiation, or again, it is literally just approaching it from a different angle, as Adam said.
Oh, I think there's a difference in people's heads, but I think it's a false. I think it's a false definition. I think, Adam said it's overlapping. It's a Venn diagram of slightly overlapping things to approach the same core problem. And you are if you're coming from I guess a DevOps angle, you should, you'll be building towards getting observability, and you'll be thinking about, well, you build it, you run it, and balance backlogs, in terms of your work and ensuring you've got a balance between feature work and debt work and risk work and and defect work. If you're coming from an SRE angle, your starting position is error budgets and SLIs and SLOs and so on, and it's just a slightly different way of solving for the balancing your workload problem and ensuring you're on top of the right things at the right point in time. They're entirely complementary. They're, again, they're on the same continuum, just slightly distance apart. But let's not forget, again, the big hoofing anti-pattern that people always do. It's a Spotify thing. I work for Spotify. I'm not going to do any in-house. I'm going to ignore everything that Simon Wardley says in Wardley mapping, and all I'm going to do is go work for Spotify. So I'm going to pull a lever and implement the Spotify model. Why hasn't that solved my problem? You know, SRE is the label that Google used to solve their particular problem. Do some of the stuff that's relevant to you that work for them in your context when you figure out what your problem is, you know, which is what DevOps says as well. So that's where your mindset and your people need to be. That's where you need to get them.
Yeah, absolutely. Tina's actually just popped something in. I guess the very, very final comment, Tina's just popped something in the chat, and I think, Tina, you're unmuted now, but in cloud and digital, they have 40% come from a development background, 50 from an ops sysadmin background, and 10 non-technical. So I guess quite a broad background, you know, the people are coming from certainly from an digital point of view than Tina.
Yeah, I think it's a different type of, I think there's different types of engineers. You've got like, I would say like there's more like, we call them ops engineers versus build engineers. And you have different engineers that can do really great stuff. So it does a developer from a developer background make good serverless engineers? Yes, they do. Doing that type of work, more cloud native work. As where you do need like the ops type people who know how to operate and manage, because it's not an easy transition for somebody in development to understand networking and understand how many hosts are in a /26 subnet, that type of thing, as where your ops people do. And then you cross-dimensional train people, and you've got then really great fundamental great engineers that can really help your organization. And I think that you need both of those types of engineers and the non-technical to be able to deliver good quality cloud platforms and code.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, I think we'll have to wrap it up there, because as I said, we could I think talk about this for such interesting topics. And I appreciate everyone putting, you know, questions and comments in the chat. I think it's, you know, really helped to keep things flowing and obviously get a different perspective, or sometimes you know, similar perspective to what we've been. So yeah, obviously massive thanks Tina, Jim, Adam, Nick, all for sharing your thoughts, obviously making the time today, and obviously giving your insights to everyone who's joined us. And yeah, Tina, obviously, thank you so much for the conversation. Again, each topic could be its own meetup in itself. So the fact we've managed to address so much in just an hour is brilliant. So thank you so much for that. And obviously, thank you everyone for joining. I think we've had a pretty stable number throughout. So yeah, I appreciate everyone kind of bearing with us, even though we have gone over a little bit now. So I really appreciate it. I guess a final note from me, it is a community-driven meetup. So if there are any particular topics people are passionate about, whether you want to do a talk yourself or whether you just want to see it spoken about, feel free to contact me via LinkedIn or indeed the meetup. But I think that's pretty much everything from us. So yeah, once again, a big thank you to our 4 speakers. I think, yeah, been amazing insights, and thank you so much. And for everyone tuning in, and yeah, hopefully see everyone in the next one in a month's time.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Excellent. Thanks so much, guys. Cheers.